First, overseas, investigators in Belgium admit to failings in its high-level counterterrorism units. Clearly, better coordination and communication is key to stopping attacks before they occur. Let's bring in Terry Turchie, the former Deputy Assistant Director of the FBI Counterterrorism Division. Terry, you were the leader on the Unabomber case, the Olympic Park Task Force. Do you think the police raids in Europe are being conducted effectively?
Well, I do, Dagan. Good morning. I think that I've always tried to avoid criticizing the police when they're involved in an urgent situation like this and something that breaks very fast. We'll know at some point in time where mistakes were made, and that's very important because we have to learn from those mistakes. But right now, I think that if you look at what happened just a couple of days ago, they've been moving very quickly based upon everything they found at the crime scene, their efforts to identify and actually know who they were dealing with. And I think they did that in a pretty fast fashion. So once they did that, they were able to take these names, and then the universe is kind of open to them. They can talk to other law enforcement agencies and intelligence agencies. They can get the information out. They can collect just an infinite amount of records, and really they're only stopped by their own creativity. So things start to come together quickly, and then that's what you see after a couple of days. You start to see other raids. You start to hear about other names, and you hope that they are maybe identifying perhaps other groups that were getting ready to get out and do damage.
But, Terry, we can't help but look back at what was known. You have U.S. agencies listed these two brothers, these al-Bakari brothers, as threats on terror watch lists here, terror databases here. One of these brothers nabbed by Turkey and sent back to Europe, sent back to the Netherlands as a potential terrorist. There are a number of different things that have been happening. In fact, a terror network developing in the Brussels neighborhoods over a period of many years. And it just seems to boggle the mind that they couldn't prevent this attack, particularly after Paris.
Well, Dagan, it sounds reasonable and it's a good point, but all of this is kind of in hindsight. It all comes together very nicely now. And I'm not saying that to make an excuse. The problem I think that we're having that we don't talk about enough is that the volume is just reaching such a high level. It's like the pot of water on the stove boiling over. At some point, it's just going to boil all over the stove, and you're not going to stop it. We're going to face this same thing in America. Look how many terrorist acts that have been prevented over the last few years, certainly since 9/11, by the FBI, by local law enforcement, by everybody working together. And yet, every one of those, we were a heartbeat away from something maybe happening. And over in Europe, they face an even more difficult problem because of all those neighborhoods of thousands and thousands of people, some of whom now we realize have one objective in mind, and that is to take down Western civilization. And that's why it's almost getting a little bit disheartening to see that these people are working so hard on the front lines to do everything they can as urgently as they can. But the volume is so great, and the political will sometimes, and the political decisions which have to accompany these moves just don't seem to be keeping pace with reality.
Right. I said, Terry, it's an ideological problem, a political one, an operational problem, and a financial problem, particularly for Europe. Jack Otter?
Terry, you mentioned the neighborhoods in Europe, and this is a great concern in this nation. Obviously, people are worried, and we're seeing it in the politics right now, about neighborhoods of, let's face it, populations that are largely Muslim. The counter to that is, look, these are Americans. It is not what we do in this country to go after them because of their religion, but the concern still exists. So how do we handle that balance?
Well, that's a great question, Jack, and we've actually been doing this for many years, and we do it quietly and certainly under the radar. And what happens out in the streets is in all these neighborhoods, and this is a fundamental difference between America and Europe. We've really never had a law enforcement issue where we can't feel that we can't go into any community and talk to anyone. I remember in San Francisco here a number of years ago, we were helped by former Congressman Pete McCloskey, and we had some major meetings with the Muslim community and a lot of influential leaders in it because they were concerned then, this was back in the late 90s and early 2000s, about what the FBI was doing, and there was a lot of misunderstanding and misconceptions. And so we actually embraced that, and we went to places and talked and had lunch and dinners together and worked through all that. And that is what's going on now. It goes on every day. We don't hear about those kinds of things. And this takes us in a circle back to the politicians. Sometimes it can actually be damaging for them to stand in Washington and make all kinds of noise about, quote, Muslims in general, when, quite frankly, we all know that the Muslim community has helped us in a lot of these cases. We don't go out and publicize that, but we're not going to have help from to identify these people unless they are helping us. So that goes on every day quietly here. I hope it's going on in Europe, but you get the sense that the police and law enforcement are really kind of locked out of some of those communities.
Right. Terry, thank you for being here. It's great to see you as always and your insights. We thank you for that. Terry Turchie with us.